Hi everyone, as Amy said, my name is Hayley and I'm really excited to be kicking off your symposium today with you all, and it's nice to see you all in your various classrooms around the place. So I'm going to present on what is climate change, including what is climate change adaptation and why does it matter. As Amy said, I work at ClimateWorks Australia, which is a non-profit organisation based in Melbourne. And we're really focused on driving climate action in Australia and also in the regions surrounding Australia, so the Southeast Asia and the Pacific. We're part of Monash University, and our role is to bring the latest science about how to tackle climate change in Australia to businesses and to government and industry to really help drive their action on climate change. And my role at ClimateWorks is on a program called the Land Use Futures Program. And our work focuses on helping understand what Australia needs to do to have a thriving and sustainable system for growing food and managing our land. Okay, so let's start with a little activity to see what people already know about climate change. So this is where I'll get you to hop on to PolEV, as Amy mentioned before. You can do it on your browser, on your phone or your laptop, and just visit that website that's there on the screen, polev.com/Hayley Lambert 179. Note that my name is a weird spelling of Hayley, so it's not H-A-Y-L-E-Y, that won't get you to the right place. And there's a poll there, so I'm really interested in hearing from you all. What do you think causes climate change? It's going to create a word cloud. So try and keep your response to one word, or it separates all your different words throughout the cloud. If you want to write more than one word, just leave out the spaces. And I'm going to swap over to the word cloud so we can see everybody's responses appear as they come in. And of course, if you're having troubles or it's not working for you, feel free to pop that in the Zoom chat. But hopefully you'll be able to just arrive at that website and you'll see the question and start putting in what you think one or more of the causes of climate change might be. All right, carbon emissions, good. That's definitely something we're going to talk a bit more about today. Greenhouse effect, yes, excellent. And also think about, take a step back from that. What causes those things? So yeah, we've got one comment on pollution. Where is that pollution coming from? Human activity. Very good, yes, absolutely. That is 100% true. Okay, now we're seeing, yes, so as more words of the similar types of words appear, the word will grow bigger. So we've got quite a few responses on pollution. Population growth, overpopulation, yeah, those are some interesting ones. So if there's more humans on the world doing things that cause pollution, I can see how that would be a good one. Burning fossil fuels, carbon emissions. Seems like you're all pretty clued in. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, I'm sure isn't going to be news to you. Greenhouse effect, excellent. Deforestation, waste, and land clearing. Okay, so some really similar themes coming out here. Thank you, everyone. That's it's really great to see that most people seem to be on the same page, and I'm going to dive into all of those things, or most of those things, a little bit deeper now. So I'll just swap back to the presentation. Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper into that. What are the causes of climate change? So what is climate change? Carbon pollution from burning fossil fuels like coal or oil or natural gas is changing our climate and it's warming our planet. And we burn fossil fuels for everything from creating electricity to power our homes and our businesses or the classrooms that you're sitting in right now, to driving cars, flying planes, and manufacturing things like steel or fertilizer. And carbon pollution is also referred to often as carbon emissions because we emit it. It's released from activities that we are doing. Also, I'm sure you've heard, and it came up in the poll EV just then, greenhouse gas emissions. And often we just refer to it as emissions. It's just easier to say fewer words. So for our purposes today, all of those words mean the same thing: carbon pollution, carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. All pretty much the same thing for today. So it's pretty simple. The more carbon pollution or the more carbon emissions in the air, the more of the sun's energy that gets trapped as heat as the sun's heat enters our atmosphere. So the less that's bouncing back out into the space, and the more heat that's trapped in our atmosphere. And that means that things keep getting a bit hotter on our planet. And in fact, the world has actually already gotten nearly 1 degree Celsius warmer since 1880. And that doesn't seem like a lot, 1 degree, but actually that's really quite significant. So this graph actually shows how significant that change in temperature really is compared to what's happened over history. So as I mentioned before, as we produce more carbon dioxide or carbon emissions through activities like burning coal, oil, and gas for energy, the amount of carbon dioxide in the air goes up. And it's gone up and down throughout history, but you can see from this graph how things have really escalated beyond anything we've ever seen in history since about 1950. So this graph actually shows that carbon emissions, they're going up and down for the thousands of years prior to today, but 1950, you can see this sharp spike upwards, and that's higher than anything we've ever recorded. And that trend is actually happening at the exact same time as increasing rates of burning fossil fuels and also as increasing temperatures. So it's really striking when you look at such a long time period before and see how dramatic that is now. Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick video. This is some work from NASA in the United States. And it shows global temperature anomalies from 1850 to 2017. So if you can see up here on the right, we've got years. So we're fast forwarding from 1880 to present. And up on the left is a temperature scale. And warmer colors mean temperatures that are higher than normal. So you can see as time goes on, we're in the 1970s now, things are getting warmer than normal. They're really heating up, and compared to 1880, you can see what a dramatic difference that is now. And you can see how, okay, it stopped where I didn't want it to stop. You can see how in the Arctic regions, and it's not going to show it, but certain parts of the globe have warmed even more than other parts, so at our poles. All right, next slide. Hopefully it'll get you there. There we go. Okay. So warmer temperatures really have real consequences for all of us, not just the polar bears at the Arctic. Sea levels around the world have risen nearly 20 centimetres since 1901. And that's meant that the ocean has already swallowed entire islands. And it's creeping closer to populated areas of coastal cities like New York City, or even here where I live in Melbourne. And extreme weather events like hurricanes and floods and droughts are becoming more frequent and intense. I'm just going to put the curtain down. So there's a wide range of impacts of climate change that affect people and the environment in different ways. For example, changes in rainfall patterns have a big effect on water availability for agriculture, and that can impact our food security. And as the ocean absorbs more heat from the atmosphere, the ocean warms, and that can affect the plants and the animals that live in oceans. And you might have heard in the news over the past few years about coral bleaching events on the Great Barrier Reef. So that's due to climate change, and it's getting more frequent and severe, and it's really affecting coral reefs all over the world. Climate change also can have an impact on our infrastructure. So extreme weather and sea level rise can damage our infrastructure, like our buildings, our streets, our towns. And And it can even impact our physical health. So, for example, some species of insects that carry diseases are moving to parts of the world that were previously too cold for them to survive. So now those insects can actually move into warmer areas where they can survive, and they can spread diseases where they previously weren't able to reach. As I said before, climate change will cause more frequent and severe extreme weather events like storms, floods, droughts, and fires. And all of those things can lead to geopolitical instability and social unrest in different places around the world. So as people's livelihoods and their lifestyles are impacted by climate change, it can affect the stability of the places where we live. And we're actually already starting to feel the impacts of climate change here in Australia. For example, as weather patterns shift due to climate change, farmers in Australia experience the impacts like floods, like the ones that we saw last year in Queensland, or longer droughts, or more extreme fire seasons. And you can see here on the screen just a couple of recent news headlines from 2019 and 2020 about impacts that farmers are experiencing already. So in 2015, 5 years ago, nearly all of the nations in the world agreed that they would actually limit their carbon emissions to reach a goal to keep global warming below 2 degrees. So that's the Paris Climate Agreement that you might hear about a fair bit in the news. And this 2-degree target is based on the science telling us that that's the target that we need to hit to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. So what can we do? What can we do to reduce our emissions and keep within that 2-degree target? Another word for reducing our emissions or activities that reduce our emissions is mitigation. So now we're going to talk about climate change mitigation. So what can we do to tackle climate change? So we do have the solutions to reduce emissions right now, and many of them are cost effective. So here's a few examples of things that are already reducing emissions around the world. Renewable energy is a pretty obvious one. For example, sources like wind farms or solar farms. Some of you might even have solar panels on the roofs of your houses. And Australia actually has the highest number of solar panels as compared to any country in the world per person on our roofs. So that's really amazing and exciting. Another way to reduce emissions is by using less energy or using energy more efficiently. That could be things like more energy efficient appliances in our homes or more energy efficient light bulbs. And another big one is driving and flying less because both of those activities use fossil fuels to power planes and cars. Or you could choose a method of transport that actually doesn't require fossil fuels. So electric cars or newer technologies that are coming online now for low emissions transport, like electric trucks and planes. Hopefully that's something we'll see in the future. And so there's lots of great solutions already available to us. And as time goes on, they just keep getting better and cheaper. Okay, so that was climate change mitigation. Now let's talk about adaptation. So what is climate adaptation and why is it important? So even though we're working really hard to reduce our carbon emissions, we are already seeing the impacts of climate change happening now around the world. And those impacts are actually going to continue to be felt by all of us as we phase out our carbon emissions. And that's because the carbon that is already there in the atmosphere, and it's going to continue to be released as we gradually reduce our emissions. So there's going to be a bit of a lag effect for the years to come. And that's going to continue to warm the earth and impact the climate over time. So we need strategies to adapt to those impacts. And that essentially just means changing the way we do things to reduce the strength of climate impacts that we experience. That's especially important for farmers. Climate change is going to have a big impact on what they can grow and where they can grow it. And so farmers are already changing their practices to adapt to climate change impacts. And that ensures that they can still run successful farms and still contribute to, feeding the world's growing population. So for example, many farmers use what's called cover crops, and that's a way to protect and enrich the soil, but also to retain moisture and carbon in the soil, and that's especially beneficial in increasingly hot and dry climates. We know that it's going to keep getting a bit hotter and dry for a lot of farmers around Australia, and cover crops is one great thing that they're already doing to sort of protect the soil against that impact. So you'll be learning so much more about this through the symposium. You'll be exploring specific ways that farmers are already adapting to climate change. So I'm not going to go into it in a great more detail now, but I just wanted to do a final reminder about some of the important terms that I've mentioned. So you'll obviously be covering these more in the symposium, but mitigation, it means tackling the causes of climate change to reduce how severe climate change is. So that means reducing our carbon emissions, replacing it with activities that produce emissions, replacing activities that produce emissions with other cleaner activities or technologies like renewable energy or electric cars. Adaptation means reducing the negative effects or impacts of climate change that we're all already experiencing. So that might mean that could also mean taking advantage of new opportunities that arise. So maybe adjusting farming practices to ensure that farms can withstand climate impacts might also bring new opportunities for farmers to earn income in different ways. And I'm sure you'll be hearing examples about that over the 2 days as well. So I just wanted to leave you with a quote about the great opportunity that we have now to tackle climate change and just create a more positive future for ourselves and for everyone on the planet. And this is from Greta Thunberg, who some of you might have heard of. She's from Sweden, and she was one of the students, the high school students who started the school climate strikes, which meant led to thousands of school kids all around the world striking to protest government inaction on climate change. So Greta says, humanity is now standing at a crossroads. We must now decide which path we want to take. How do we want the future living conditions for all species to be like? So the future's in our hands, and yeah, we're already on the right path. So thanks for listening, and I hope you all enjoy the symposium over the 2 days.